Mother cat adopted a tiger cub. Years later the unbelievable happened. Adrian lived in a city and often traveled to the nearby mountains, where he set up camp and spent several days in the wilderness. He was relaxing and recovering from his stressful job in the city. Adrian worked in finance and spent much of his days making phone calls and preparing invoices. But one day, something happened that would change his life forever. While Adrian sat by his tent, poking the small fire he built, Adrian heard a noise. A crying, high-pitched moaning noise. The man had spent a long time in these mountains, yet he had never heard such a sound. So he was understandably curious and interested in where it came from and what it might be. Adrian got up and walked slowly in the direction he thought the sobbing was coming from. Suddenly Adrian turned a corner and saw something that made him gape. Two tiny tiger cubs lay on the floor in front of him. They were just a few weeks old and looked terribly helpless and defenseless. Adrian, a cat lover, immediately wanted to pick her up and take her to a safe place. He realized they needed mother somewhere. Perhaps she had gone to fetch some food, or she was nearby and keeping a careful check on Adrian. Anyway, Adrian left the cubs where they were to avoid the peril by their mother. However, as time passed, it became obvious that no one was searching for the cubs. There was no mother, so the cubs were left to their own ways. When Adrian saw how thin they were, he realized he had to act. So he packed his camping kit and took the two crying tiger cubs. He would take her home and try to take care of her himself. When Adrian got home, he was greeted by his cat, Princess. She was a beautiful little cat who had given birth to multiple litters of kittens. Adrian loved Princess with his whole heart. However, when Princess saw the two tiger cubs, she became immediately curious. She looked from the cubs to Adrian, as if she wanted to know what they were, where they came from, and why they were here. Adrian didn't have time to explain himself since he needed to feed the tiger cubs as quickly as possible so that they could survive. Princess watched Adrian feed the babies, who gobbled down an entire bowl of water. At that moment, the cat did something amazing. She walked over to the cubs and began to play gently with them. Although the kittens were the same size as the cat herself, Princess knew they were kittens to take care of. It was as if the cat's maternal instincts had been awakened, and she assumed the position of mother. Over the next few weeks, the tiger cubs grew stronger and healthier. They gained weight again and they started to have more energy. Princess took care of her and the cubs followed her as if they had accepted the role as kittens. She cleaned them and encouraged them to eat and drink. She ran and played with them before all three animals curled up and fell asleep. Over time, the tigers began to grow. They grew bigger and stronger than Princess and yet she treated them as if they were her own little kittens. If their playing a little became too rough, the cat ran over and intervened. Adrian never stopped smirking as he watched his tiny little cat overpower the two massive tigers in absolute power. Unfortunately, the day came when the tigers were too big to continue living with Adrian. They grew in size and frequently caused harm to household items. In addition, Adrian spent a lot of money feeding the animals. So he decided to take her to the local zoo and ask her to take care of her from then on. As he packed her in the trunk of his car, Adrian felt a great sadness. Especially when he saw the sad expression on his cat's face as they drove away. Luckily, the zoo was happy to take the tigers in. They built a big, nice area for the tigers to play, like their home. Adrian said bye to the tigers and left them with the zoo workers. He never went back to the zoo after that. But later, Princess got sick. She was old and unable to fight anymore. Adrian took her to the vet, who said it was best to let her go. Adrian agreed, but first, he wanted to do something special for Princess. He took her to the zoo. When they got there, he saw the two tigers he had saved years ago. He didn't know if they remembered him. He went up to the glass, but the tigers didn't seem to care. Adrian felt a little sad. But then, something amazing happened. Adrian picked up his cat Princess and showed her to the tigers. Immediately, the two animals' eyes brightened up and they jumped over to the cat. They clearly remembered the animal that had raised and protected them all those years before. And the cat clearly recognized her. Adrian didn't know how that was possible as the tigers had grown so much since their split. But Princess knew that these two huge cats were her children. It must have been the smell or some other animal instinct. Princess rubbed her little body on the window and looked at the tigers. In return, they tried to rub against their mother as well. It was a very emotional encounter that melted the hearts of everyone who was there.